Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before we get into it with our guest here today, well, first of all, everyone should recognize our guest. We have Michelle back on the podcast for the third time. Just like I was telling her before, it seems like it's been 10 years since we last talked, but it's been, I think last time was, it might have been actually a year from now. It was like December-ish. So, what a world of difference it's been. But, we'll get into that, believe me, because, it's been something that I don't think any of us would have ever prepared for or planned to experience. But most importantly, she is our current guest. Michelle, thank you so much for coming back on again.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. I appreciate you having me on again as a third time on your show.
Yeah. There's a handful of guests that can say that now. I've had one 4-time guest, and that's something that you'll be definitely doing in probably about, another year from now. But why don't you give us an update on what you've been up to since we last talked? Because I mean, so much has changed that, it feels like I feels like I'm a whole new person basically just from all the experiences.
Yeah, a lot's been going on. I actually opened up my own gym facility inside of a longevity wellness center. So I worked alongside a physical therapist, Dr. McCuve, and he let me basically take over his practice because he's full time at an ER here in Las Vegas. So from there, I became a personal trainer and a private personal trainer. So it's one on one in my own facility. I don't share it with anybody else. So I've been running that since last December. And that has just been a blessing in disguise when it comes to what all has been going on for me to really help others and serve and make sure that staying on top of their health is a priority. So yeah, I've been doing that.
So how have you been doing all that stuff through the pandemic too? Because so many like gym closures that we heard about. And well,
Mhm.
first of all, what was Nevada's response like to the pandemic? Because in Minnesota, we went like super hardcore. The gyms just got shut down again 2 weeks ago, and they're not going to open up for until December 18th. So what's it been like there in Nevada?
So in Nevada, we did go under shutdown for 30 days, March 10th, and then that lasted for another month. And so while the gyms were closed, I went ahead and I started operations as an online trainer. So I started going on YouTube and filming workout modules, and I put a 16-week meal plan program together. And from there, a lot of my clients who were training with me in my facility just signed up with me online.
That's, hey, that's great because I think everything has really gone online. And first of all, I wish I was in a state where we'd actually have opened up. And when did you guys open up? Like in May?
Yeah, it was about June 1st.
Yeah, July, like mid-July for us, or I think it was like late July. So yeah, we definitely need to get our act together up here. And we don't even have that many cases as opposed to many other states. So I don't get, that's a whole different thing where I could just go into a rant about that. But yeah, I mean, yeah, we really need to get our act together up here. But I mean, on top of all this stuff, what has your bodybuilding journey been like since then? Have you competed in any shows, or have you just been sort of taking that in the back seat during the pandemic? What has this been like?
Yeah, so with the gym closing, and it was actually 1 week prior to our grand opening, and then with the pandemic happening, I put, um, bodybuilding on the side. I still train vigorously every single day. Just wanted to make sure that my investment and my business and my livelihood was as manageable as possible under the circumstances, and the stage will always be there. I will always be ready to rock it. I just wanted to make sure that my clients were taken care of, that, everything being on hold, it just took a really big shock to everybody, and it still is. So I look at as the reward of being on stage will happen when the timing is right, but right now it's to put my thinking cap on and grind it to business, helping people as much as I can online or in person. And be it that I am in my own private facility, I feel like that has my business has quadrupled because a lot of people are dealing with anxiety, depression, social interactions, and a lot of people just want to get back into having a simple routine, even if it's going to a facility and working out. And so I find that I quadrupled my business. Why stop and gear up for a show?
Yeah. And I think honestly, you made the right choice because we have heard so many horror stories on this podcast of guests who have, you know, they've ended up being on like 10-month preps because they started like in December of last year. And then, the shows kept getting delayed and canceled. So I think at least for your health, at least too, that was probably the better choice. But yeah, that's so great that you've been able to do that with your business because other people, have found a rough time with that. But yeah, it just shows that, with any scenario that it comes, if you are able to adapt and make changes, I mean, you can be successful in what you're doing. But when it also comes down to the mental effects, like you're talking about, a lot of people are depressed and anxious. How have you been dealing with all this stuff mentally? Because so many people, they'll, just like with bodybuilding, they notice the physical, they mention the physical, but they never talk about, oh, how are you feeling? Because a lot of people, and I know them as a fact, and even myself too, I've been dealing with, just the loneliness of not seeing and being around people. Because as you can tell, I'm a very people person. But how have you been dealing with all this mentally?
I've been actually, I've been doing very, very, very well. And I feel like because I had my own facility, I was able to go there even when everything was shut down, to go there for myself and train. But I do have a gym in my home. Um, but mentally, I have always been a survivor, and I've always been keen on what it is really hard times of stress. I'm really, really good balancing that out. So I myself have been thriving and flourishing through all of this because I'm an introvert myself. And as far as my clients go, the ones that have kids, the ones that have elderly parents that were impacted by COVID. I took on a client who lost his wife 5 months ago to cancer. I took on a client who lost two of her best friends and her husband's on dialysis. So the mental aspects of me going through something where I can help change someone else to see better, as far as right now mentally, is a very, very important thing for me. And so even today I had this sheet of paper that my three clients this morning, I said, I want to talk a little bit about what we've talked about through our workouts. So as they're going and they're lifting and they're doing their reps and they're doing their circuit training, we talked about their mind body connection. We talked about their confidence and their esteem and the difference between the both of them, and we talked about their inner strength. We talked about how to cut out toxic crap when they first started working out. The minute they walked in and they felt this sense of release, and they talked about all the toxic stuff and the people that they wanted to cut out. And with that, we talked about, during our workouts, we talk about living healthier and being more mindful and being more positive and less negative. And if you really, really look at it, you probably have you have a few more positives than you have negatives, but we always dwell on the negatives when it's hard. And I tell people, if you look at your circumstance, I promise you there are more positives than there are negatives. If you work out, you'll see more positives, you'll feel more positives than you do negatives. That was just a couple of things that during my sessions, it's like a counseling session, they get out all of their frustrations, they release all their frustrations. To me, there is nothing better than to have someone be able to release all that, even tears, and to feel safe, be in an environment that they don't have to check around their surroundings. And yeah, we need to wear masks, we need to be safe, but under all of this mentally, it hasn't really affected me that much, surprisingly.
Well, and that's great too. But yeah, and I'm glad that you're able to do that with your clients, the mental stuff too, because that's, there's so many ways that you can convince yourself not to work out, and about 90% of that stuff is mental. And I mean, just like how you can convince yourself to work out if you're not feeling it, if your body's telling you no, and you really just have that mental willpower. So yeah, it really is just a mind game. But you mentioned that mind to body connection, and that's something that I love to talk about on this podcast, because as someone who's been working out almost their whole life and who knows all this stuff, I love to educate others on, that might not be aware. And that's something that you say to other people and they're like, oh, what is that? And they don't realize that that is probably the most important thing when it comes to their training. People say it's either mind to body or mind to muscle connection. It's really either or. But I mean, if I were, say, to have lived under a rock my entire life and never heard that my entire life, how would you explain that to me? Because it's something that I think, if you become familiar with it, it helps your workouts out, times 10.
Hmm. I would say the mind always goes to the path of least resistance. So your mind, no matter what, is going to try and defeat you in what you want to accomplish because of the energy you have to put out. And under the time of stress, when our fight or flight, autonomic system, they call it the systematic, pre-systematic, our fight or flight goes off. We'll try and conserve our energy as much as possible, especially if we're around toxic people, toxic lifestyles. So, with exercise, I found that a lot of people become resistant if they're not confident. And the minute that you put them on a weekly regimen, they start building that confidence, knowing they can lift this or they can push that. I just feel like when you build confidence in your mind allows your body to relax and you're able to get through the rep or the set. And then that mind body connection just grows stronger and stronger. And as we look at habits, we look at emotions, we even look at things like addictions, the motor neurons, are they call them the synapses in our brain, the little, and we're trying to find connections in everything right now, especially under uncertainty. So at the beginning of my circuit trainings, we always warm up. We do a breathing exercise. You want to do it with me, Ryan, real quick?
Sure, let's do it.
Ready? All
Yep.
right. Deep breath in, inhale, and exhale. One more time, inhale and exhale. This time I want you to close your eyes and go to a happy spot, a beach or a hike or somewhere really, really peaceful
Any
for
place warm, any place warm, really.
cl- close your eyes, take a deep breath in and exhale. And now we start at the top of the head and we roll out our neck. If you have any neck issues, definitely don't do this, but just roll out your neck. Good. Now look down, look up, and now roll your shoulders out. So simple things like this before they even start working out, I find that just breath, controlling of your breath, releasing any anxiety before you start working out so you don't stretch or tense up anything, and really, really just taking a second to just relax.
No, that's
Hmm.
I'm feeling a little bit more. I felt just a tad bit warmer, just even thinking about that nice warm beach that I'm at. So hey, I might have to. I'm probably actually going to definitely have to start doing that more often now. But when it comes down to the nutrition too, especially during this pandemic, were there any food shortages in Nevada that you had to deal with?
No,
Lucky. Well, because I'm in farm country, or Minnesota is a lot of farm country, and I'm about half an hour away from farm country. There was a huge, shortage where because people weren't eating as much pork, and the pigs were getting too fat, so they had to, but so there's a meat shortage there. But yeah, it's a whole thing. But luckily, I have a neighbor who is, a huge deer hunter, so he had like 3 refrigerators full of venison that we just go over there whenever we needed something, and he'd toss it to us, and so we were lucky that way at least. But yeah, I mean, this has made me lose my faith in humanity, knowing that toilet paper was the number one thing that people had to go for, as opposed to anything else. It's like, oh, you don't want to go for water or food or anything like that. You want to go for toilet paper when you have leaves right outside your house. But yeah, I don't. That's just made, like when you said you're a survivor, that made me lose faith a little bit in humanity. Where I'm like, okay, we might not be, if it let's just hope that we don't get like an Ebola outbreak or anything like that, where it's like actually like where it's like everyone that gets it almost dies. So it's just been just a fascinating time. But when you're talking about also, just helping people with their positivity and stuff, what would you say are anything really specific when it comes to people's mental problems during this pandemic? Because like you said, a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, but are there any specific case, like how do you deal with clients that are afraid to go back into gyms? Because I mean, I bet you deal with that a lot too, because I've even had my reservations sometimes going back to gyms, especially if you have a gym where there's the majority of people where it's mask optional and no one really wears a mask. And I'm not saying that I'd wear a mask, because luckily I had to move back in with my parents, but they have a nice gym downstairs that I can train at mostly. But how have you been dealing with your clients' fears and anxieties? Because that's, as someone that has had anxiety my whole life, that is a powerful thing.
I've kind of had to work with them, and within the first month is just allowing them to trust me. I have a lot of people come in with expectations and then they get overwhelmed, and then of course with the mask thing, so I say, okay, let's start building your at-home gym. I start looking at all the basics of how they can just every day go for a walk. And so when it comes to anxiety, since I've dealt with it a lot, I find, or I don't deal with it as much now because I've managed it emotionally, physically, psychologically. But I feel like knowing that I have had anxiety, I can help someone who has had it by slowing down and making sure that they're breathing during their reps so they don't hyperventilate, to slow down and stretch when the heart rate goes up way too fast, to be able to tell them, hey, this is an environment you can release your stresses. Don't release them at me. I make sure I tell them that. but this is a space you can kind of call your safe haven, for you to be able to release out anything that's holding you back. It's keeping your mind going because anxiety is really just conceived and pre-notioned thoughts of the future and not having control of knowing what the circumstances of what it will be in the outcome, and that's where anxiety gets us stirred up because we can't control that. Either that or it's just thinking too much, and by slowing the monkey mind down and doing things like yoga, stretching, balancing, muscle strengthening, incorporating that with aromatherapy, red light therapy, body compressions. I do all of the holistic stuff. I go through all of the things, and then I even talk more about nutrition and inflammation and things that's caused depression and anxiety or anything in the body, like, so I try and work backwards and take baby steps to really kind of say, I know you don't trust me right now, but your first month, I'll guarantee you'll lose 3 to 5 pounds, and then hopefully you'll build up some good mental tools in the future. And if they do have anxiety, I just tell them, don't try and push too much on yourself right now. Be easy, especially right now. You need to give yourself some grace. Maintenance is probably the most important thing. Don't try and catapult yourself where you want a goal in mind, and right now your goal is just to take it day by day and be easy on yourself.
No, and I mean, my anxiety, luckily, like yours, is gone. A lot of it now. I mean, I still have just a tad of it, but for mine, mainly, it was just pitching in baseball, just because I had a lot of pressure on me, and that's a whole different topic for a whole nother podcast because that's a whole podcast in and of itself. But yeah, it's great that you're able to do that. But you mentioned that there's some foods that might cause a little bit more anxiety and depression. What are some foods that people should avoid if they suffer from any of those things?
Well, anxiety and depression, first off, I want to know if they're taking medications, and then second, I want to know if they're drinking alcohol. And typically, if people are drinking alcohol and they're mixing any kind of medications, it's going to make it even worse. And then they can't lose weight, and then they're inflamed. So I start from there right from the get go, and then I kind of I tell them it's very important you incorporate a probiotic or a digestive enzyme. I link them to my fitness pal. I kind of monitor and watch what they eat. And typically, when someone's cheating or they're knowing that they're eating bad or poor habits, they right off the bat tell me. And so we can kind of, I monitor an account and I'm their accountability coach just to keep track of what they want. So if they do have anxiety or depression, if they're eating things that are causing inflammation, it's probably going to show up in the gut or autoimmunity or lack of sleep or mood disorders or and lots of things. So for me, I flat out tell them, are you taking medication, are you drinking, let's curb out the bad habits, but I don't overwhelm them with too much. I let them know I organically grow with you, and whatever habits you want to work on, that's what I'm going to help you with.
Well, and you mentioned sleep, and that's just so important. We talked about it last time too, but it's more important, specific, I think, even during this pandemic, because people's sleep schedules are out of whack. I mean, even mine
Yeah.
is. I'll admit it. Like, I'm going to bed much later than I was, and I was going to bed late anyway. Like, even
Hmm.
even this last night, I was in bed at like 3:30 in the morning, and then I went to sleep, and then I got up like at noon now. And luckily, I had two podcasts scheduled before, but we had to delay them because I got text messages at like 9 a.m. They're like, "Oh, we can't go," and I was like, "Oh, thank God, I can sleep some more now." But it's it's just been out of whack. But how has your sleep schedule been during this pandemic? Because I know that you were one of those. I remember from our last podcast that
Yeah,
you like to wake up very, very early, which is a foreign concept to me. So how have you been, like, sleep wise during this?
I've been good. I've really been it's kind of an unfortunate thing. Obviously, we've cut off our social gatherings and stuff like that. I look at more at, okay, let's try and go to bed early so I can, you know, improve my immune system. And if I need to, things like reading or painting or anything to kind of calm my mind down a few hours before I want to go to bed. If I'm having a really, really stressful day or I've worked out really hard or I've trained a lot of clients, I make sure, my plans, I try and at least do some outings once to twice a week. But if not, I go to bed early. I go to bed early and I take my magnesium before I go to bed, and if I need to take melatonin. But if not, if I can just get through the night with some nice chamomile tea and some magnesium, and I try to I turn off my phone around 6 or 7. I don't go on social media, and I when we were talking, I was on my social media 8 to 9 hours a day. Now I average 2.5 to 3 hours a day. And that's just an hour and a half on social media. So I don't scroll. I'm not on a laptop. I'm not on my phone. I don't watch TV. If I do watch TV, it's a happy movie. I don't watch the news. Just don't. I stay away.
Oh my god, that's the life right there. I wish I could, but I'm just a part of that generation where I literally can't. But hey,
It's addictive.
mhm,
It's addicting,
yeah,
addicting, you
yeah,
know.
it's yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, you have grown so much from last time we talked. I looked at your following on YouTube. I looked at all the guests you were interviewing, and I was like flattered that you wanted to interview me because when I throw up my guns, I'll be like, well, I hope they're the same size from last year.
Well, let's get it
But
over.
yeah,
Let's get it
you
over
have
with. Let's get it over with.
six.
Let's get it over with then right now. Let's see if they're the same size from last year.
Oh no. Well, all right.
Look at that.
They're all right. They're not
Yeah.
as, but
Hey,
hey, hey, hey. But you've grown a lot. You have grown significantly because of being on tech. I mean, you've touched people from around the world and all the girls and their stories. I can't even imagine how awesome that is. So, it is a good thing that you're online. It is a good thing that you're, in front of a screen.
it helps me. Yeah, it helps me get through this knowing that I have people to talk to and like
And are you
incredible.
making money off of these?
Okay, so literally on this podcast, I'm averaging like $400 a month now. That's about. I mean, it's great, but I got let go of my other job because of coronavirus, my real job. So,
Hmm.
it's not really paying the bills, but hey, it's something to do. And then I have a Patreon where I'm making like $60 a month, so it's not. It's
That's still something.
Yeah, hey, it's still something. It's still something to work on. It still pays for all my bills. My goal is by the end of next year to be able to do this full time financially. So the way things
You
have been
will.
going, yeah,
Yeah.
I hope so. But yeah, so it's a lot of fun and interesting times. But getting back into our podcast because this is and again, I'm honored to have you on and talk again because you're a delight to talk to, and you're one of those guests where I can just sit back and relax when I'm talking to you. I don't have to worry about like getting caught up in answers and stuff. Where I've had some guests where they pause like every 15 seconds and then or they give me like the 5-second answers back. Where one guest I was like, hey, so tell me a little bit about your fitness journey, and they're like, oh, I just wanted to get in shape, so I did. I was like, oh, great job, great job. So yeah, but no, so that I mean, you're a great guest with that. But I mean, being in Las Vegas, what's that been like? Because it seems like Las Vegas is a town that is consumed by the obviously gambling and the casino stuff. How is the economy adjusted in Las Vegas? Because obviously that stuff had to be shut down for a while. So was that just a free for all?
Yeah, that was scary times. We would drive down the strip completely empty, but there would be a cop car at every single casino entrance with their lights going, just saying, "Hey, we're watching you." And just we almost every single person watching this has never experienced anything like this on earth. So the feeling of the unknown was just and still it's going to take a couple years for Vegas to be back, but there's still people, there's still tourists on the strip. There's still cars driving up and down it. Um, it's a little slower. It's a lot tighter when it comes to people spending money. Um, and the one thing I'm wondering how it's going to be is with the expos because with the National Rodeo Federation is in Dallas right now, which was going to be in Vegas, and the CSN was is the biggest I mean some of the biggest that brings in millions if not billions a year. That's not going to be there. So, yeah, that's a little concerning. But we're going to make it.
Yeah, and eventually, yeah, people, and I even talked to. So my grandpa was a World War II vet. He's what 99 years old now. So he's literally since today was Pearl Harbor. I messaged him about that. But yeah, he was. I even told him, and he's like, yeah, he fought in Germany, and he was. I even told him said, have you experienced anything like this in your lifetime? And he's like, no, I haven't. Even being a combat veteran and stuff like that. So it just goes to show. But I did Monica Steiner, who is another guest that I've had on 3 times, and she's just a delight to talk to as well. She was talking about it because she was raised in Argentina. So she was saying how when she was a kid, I mean, I think she says that, people from, really well off countries are finally kind of experiencing what it's like to kind of live in a third world country for a little while just because of all the stuff that we're going through. So she put it in a way like that I was like, oh, that actually does make a lot of sense, that we're kind of just we've had it kind of easy in our lives, that when we finally face like a real challenge like this, it's interesting to see how we adapt. But yeah, hearing about that in the Strip, I mean, we had casinos, yeah, that just opened up a couple months ago, and yeah, you can go in there, but you got to wear. It's I haven't gone into a casino yet because that's something that I'm waiting to for things to really get cleaned up a little bit. But yeah, it's just fascinating times that we've lived in. But I mean, with all this stuff that's going on too, have you been able to keep anything from your normal schedule, or has everything had to be adjusted?
Out of my normal schedule, I don't train with my coach as much, because obviously I have to work more. And just the bodybuilding competition life has just kind of been placed on hold, which is fine because I'm still, I don't know, quadrupling my business really kind of put it in perspective of, when money's good, money's good. So keep it coming and be thankful and be humble. And, the stage will always be there. I'll always be, one day I will be cranking and ready to go. But doing 8 shows in 2 years, I had my fill for a little bit. So it's been a year since I've been on stage, a little over a year. And I'm planning on possibly I'm looking at November of next year. So probably around Christmas time next year when it slows down, getting back into shape and gearing back up. But honestly, I'm pretty happy where I'm at right now. I don't need to be planning and pushing anything for the future.
Well, you're also in a group of about 20 of my guests who you're able to stay in, a similar amount of shape for the whole year, where most people, they go
Mhm.
through that, 30 to 40 pound fluctuation in between their shows. But being that
Right.
you are one of those, was it hard for you to sort of maintain this mentally because of the fact that you know that you're not going to be competing for a while with the pandemic, to not just say, hey, maybe I'll eat just a little bit more than normal and I'll put on some weight? Or was it always just because you've been in this sort of mode where you always stay in sort of contest-esque shape year round, that it was easier for you to maintain it even during the pandemic?
So during the pandemic, I went vegan for a little bit, and I went up to about 135. So I did gain a little weight because I was sedentary. Um, and then once everything opened up, I went back to eating pescatarian and did a little keto. Um, and intermittent fasting. But yeah, like you said, I majority of the time am pretty prepped ready, so it just takes me about 2 weeks to a month to get geared up, and then I'm good to go, which I'm fortunate about.
Yeah, I mean, well, especially going vegan too. That's something that was interesting. So, was that something that you are you still vegan now, or was it just something that you tried?
No, I just tried it because I figured if I'm sedentary and I'm not going to be training as hard and kind of sitting around, well, I'm not going to need that much food. So lots of juicing, lots of smoothies, lots of salads, just tons and tons of vegetables and fruit and nuts and beans. And then finally, when I did get put more protein, that's when I, was training back harder and training back in the gym. And I'm just so fortunate because everyone everywhere around me within like a 1 mile radius is my grocery store, my gym, my juice bar. So it's like I don't really have to travel that far, so wasting time. A lot of people have to drive long distances to get to places, so for me, like, being in a hub is easier for me to stay in prestige shape, so I like that.
Yeah, well, and yeah, and now it's time for me to admit something that I've never admitted. I've never had a salad in my entire life before.
Oh
Never
my.
had it. Never
But
had it. Never had a salad before.
why?
I was always just the way that I was taught taught to believe was that only women eat salad. That was kind of what my worldview was at the time, and especially in high school when everyone ate. That was just like the girls that would line up at the salad bar in the cafeteria. But yeah, so I've never had salad in my life. I mean, I love
Just
sunflower seeds. That's the
meat
closest that I've gotten to.
meat and bread and
Yeah, and well, and like bananas and apples on occasion and grapes on occasion. But yeah, that's really it. Yeah,
Ryan.
I know, I know, I know. That's the one bad habit that I've taken from baseball too, is that I still love sunflower seeds even though they're really bad, like with sodium and stuff. Like they're horrible. Like I had a bag last night because every Sunday that's my cheat, where I can have a whole bag of sunflower seeds, and I have like one of those huge bags that takes me.
But it's like it's the emotional connection. You
Yeah,
reminisce on your good days back in baseball.
yeah,
It's like the same thing for the holidays. We
yeah.
reminisce on good old grandmother's cookies and our
Hmm.
third generation meatloaf, or like the recipes of reminiscent. Emotionally, we get connected to food. So
We have Lefse and Lutefisk, so it's not that much to really look forward to.
yeah.
Our big Norwegian side. So lutefisk is horrible. If anyone, it's a fish basically, but it's got other crap in it, and it just ugh. But lefse is all right. Lefse is like cinnamon bread basically, where it's just except it's like except because it's from Norway and Norway's cold as shit a lot. It's got to be like super cold bread too when you eat it. So it doesn't. It's just it's weird. But yeah, that's. I mean, but do you have any? Are you planning on getting together with family at all during the holidays, or are you just taking this just being by yourself?
I was actually going to take some time. I have to obviously go get tested and then spend some time with some family. And then, yeah, I was going to head back to California and go see them. And yeah, so I'll do that for
Well,
a few days.
I'll say good luck with that because didn't California just go into like a major lockdown today? I thought someone said something like that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's so unexpected with all this news. You never, it doesn't surprise me when something happens and, you have to change plans. So,
Yeah, but who? Yeah, for us, like we have an uncle that lives like half a mile away from us. Who he comes over like every day anyway, so we'll have him over for Christmas. But we're taking the Christmas off a little bit. We finally did put up a Christmas tree though for like the first time in 3 years because that's. I mean,
yay.
we had to do something for that. So yeah, there's that. But I mean, a couple of the questions that I love to ask before we wrap things up, and I asked you this the last two times, and I'll ask you it again. But again, I am not Nostradamus. I cannot predict the future. So last time you were on, when I asked you if a year from today, where would you like to be at in your life? If you would have predicted a global pandemic and everything like that, I would have bet my entire life savings against it and I would have lost. So it goes to show you that I have no idea what's going to happen from now on. But in your ideal world, because again, we could be talking a year from today, and there could be a fire going on in the background. You could hear gunshots in the background. Who knows what the world's going to be like a year from today? But in your ideal world, where would you like to be at? In your coaching, in your bodybuilding, and in everything aspect in your life. If we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at?
Honestly, I'd like to be right where I am now. I would just like to put more balance in my training.
Mhm.
So if I do gear up for a competition, I can really focus on that. So I'd like to be right where I'm at.
Yeah, and that's great. And honestly, that's an easier goal to have than some of the people that I've had on. We're like, oh, I want my pro card, I want all that. And it's like, well, we'll see what happens this next year. But yeah, that is just so great. And is there one piece of advice that I think that you could give someone? Because I think, especially in this day and age with the pandemic, everyone wants to get in shape, but I mean, if you use that excuse, first of all, that you don't have the time to work out, I want to know what's going on with your life right now because everyone has more free time. I don't care what you say, but so many people
True.
just, I mean, let's be honest, everyone wants to get in better shape. Even if you're the most in shape person on the planet, you'll find a way that you want to get in better shape. But so many people just lack that knowledge. So if someone were to walk up to you and say, Michelle, during this pandemic, I have so much more free time and I really want to get in shape. What's the best piece of advice you would give them just to get started? Because like before, when I asked you this last time, I mean, just taking that first step really helps. But especially during this unique time period, I think it would be a different set of instructions as opposed to like if we were to ask you this last year.
I'd say create more of your mind body connection and start an at home gym.
Or just go for a walk. Really, that's like the easiest thing that you can do if you have both able-bodied legs. I mean, that's what I do. That I'll be doing that tonight after I work out. I'll just go on like a half an hour walk. But before the or during the pandemic, when I wasn't really lifting weights, I took a month off of that just because I did something with my shoulder where I didn't even get it checked out, but it's fine now. I don't. I'm one of those guys where I don't go to the doctor unless I'm basically dead. But uh, I was walking on the treadmill for like a month, and I would do like 80 to 100-minute cardio sessions where I'd get like 7 to 8 to 9 miles in between then and a walk. And I would just watch movies because I hate cardio more than life itself. But the problem was I ran out of movies to watch after about 50 days. So, I had to stop doing that now. So now I only do like the half an hour ones where I watch TV shows. But yeah, again, everyone go and check out Michelle on her Instagram and all those other links. You can see from her photo in the back, you can see where you can find her on Instagram and Facebook, and go and give her a shout out and go and give her a follow because yeah, I mean, as she's proven on the podcast, she does so many more things than just, the physical working out training part. She'll help you with the mental side too, which so many more people are suffering for. And I mean, I would rather be out of shape. I would rather be out of shape and have a good mindset than be in shape and have a bad mindset. That's the honest to God truth. And I think a lot of people would be too. So, I mean, that's one of the most important things. And she really does that well. So everyone go and check that out. And Michelle, is there anyone that you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap things up?
I'd like to give a shout out to you, Ryan, because without you, we wouldn't be here. And I'm very proud of all the hard work you've done and staying in contact. And I love following up. It's been a year since we've talked, and to see how we have grown.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all about support. So
Yep.
thank you for being a part. Thank you for having this, and keeping me in the loop with the DD on the spot.
Oh, of course. You'll always be in the loop. We'll have you on a year from now too. I mean, you're one of the guests that I'd have on earlier than that, but the problem is that if I'm only doing like 2 podcasts a week, eventually it comes around where I was like, if I'm trying to get everyone else on a year from now, I've gotten like to like what 250 unique guests. So it's like I'm gonna have to pick or choose people, but you're in that upper tier of people that I have on every single year. It's like you, Katie Lee, Monica Steiner, Tiffany Boyle, and about a handful of other ones where and then the other ones, it's like a year and a half to 2 years, depending on if I have time. But yeah, that's
Cool.
and that's and that's just amazing. And everyone, go and give her a follow. I really appreciate it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.